Well, here in Croke Park with four-time All-Ireland winner with Kilkenny, Paul Murphy. Kilkenny overcoming Clare 226 to 20 points. Paul Murphy, we did not see that coming, did we?
No, absolutely not. The first half performance in particular, we just didn't see coming. Clare not at the races at all today, very flat. But Kilkenny went about their business as well. You have to give Kilkenny credit. I think they only had maybe one wide in the first half. Again, by the end of the game, Clare with 24 wides, Kilkenny with 9. So, look, all you have to do is look at the stats to see where this all went wrong. But Clare's decision-making, their general overall performance, their teamwork, it just wasn't there today. But Kilkenny went about their business. They can only play the team that's in front of them, and they were just so clinical today.
And it will be either Limerick or Galway in the final. Of course, Limerick and Galway meeting tomorrow, and you might be able to hear it. They're readying the pitch behind us. They've got the lawnmowers out and the seagulls are buzzing around. John Conlon was a late cry-off for Clare. How much of an effect did that have on them?
Well, I suppose it's hard to know now. If it was a closer game, I would have said John Conlon had a huge effect, but I don't think John Conlon's presence there today would have changed it. It seemed to be an overall team, an overall panel position that, they were just flat today. Before the game when it was announced, I thought, this is big now. This could be a door open for Kilkenny. But once the game transpired, you just saw that, actually, no, whether John Conlon was there or not, I think Kilkenny were going to win this fairly comfortably. Maybe the last few weeks just added up for Clare. It's hard to know. But everywhere in any position, in every area on the pitch, Kilkenny just completely outmuscled Clare. So disappointing for Clare. John Conlon wasn't there, but hard to say that that's where they lost it.
11 wides for Clare in the first half. It was 117 to 6 points at the break. Keown with the goal in injury time. At that point, it looked like Clare had no chance. And of course, that proved to be the case. Was it Kilkenny pressure? Was it slack shooting? What led to so many poor wides from the Clare point of view? Because if they'd have even converted half of them, they might still have been in the game at halftime.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was a combination of both, really. There has to be a mindset thing here for Clare in terms of that they were flat. They weren't tracking as hard as we've seen them in other matches. They weren't working for each other as hard. So you'd have to imagine with the shooting, there's a small bit of the mindset there. But I have to give credit to Kilkenny as well. They forced Clare to shoot from strange angles and tough angles and from distance as well. In the first half there, Shane O'Donnell popped up with a good point and we thought, okay, this is Clare getting into the game. But after that, then we saw Clare taking a few shots from midfield and it kind of killed Clare's momentum and their confidence as well. When they're going over, they're brilliant points and they're inspirational. But when you keep striking those points wide or striking those wides, it just kills the team's confidence and they just kept going for them. And we were looking down saying you have to do something different here, but they didn't. And that just fed into Kilkenny's game plan.
And I do want to praise Kilkenny and they were brilliant today. But you can't look at this game and not talk about how bad Clare were. Were you surprised that they went with very direct and long ball into the full forward line? And were you even more surprised that they didn't change that sooner because it just wasn't working? It was like bears to a bun to that Kilkenny full back line.
Yeah, it just looked like that Clare couldn't figure it out at all. And, when they went through the Kilkenny defence, in fairness to Kilkenny closed them down and stifled them. And I think the big thing was that Kilkenny mixed it up. They went short coming out. They didn't panic with the ball coming out of defence. And they worked the ball up, which meant that Clare had to step up in Kilkenny and try and close them down. And then Kilkenny struck a few long balls into the forward line. So it kept Clare honest by working the ball out nice and short, sometimes working up to midfield, but then also striking that ball long in. We saw TJ Reid in the first half. He plucked one or two balls out of the air, set one up for Adrian Mullen. And, Clare couldn't get to grasp with Kilkenny. They couldn't implement their game plan on them. So as a result, they just kept striking long balls. And it just that just said to me that, Clare were lacking answers there for what they want to do. And at that stage, it was too late. At that stage of the game, you just couldn't reverse it. And Kilkenny just capitalised on that, really.
If Kilkenny are to get back to where they were, back when you were winning All-Irelands regularly, 4-0 for you, they need Owen Cody and Adrian Mullen to lead this team. They are special talents. And while they have shown that in the past, they've both been named Young Player of the Year. I think there's even more of them. Today, we maybe saw that. Owen Cody and Adrian Mullen, they got scores, yes. But also at times, Adrian Mullen was popping up in the back line. He was an outball for defenders. He was hooking, he was blocking, and Owen Cody was doing the same.
Yeah, absolutely. In the first half there, we saw Adrian Mullen popping up with a few points. And then I think the last ball that Adrian Mullen actually held in his hand was in the left corner back position in the first half. And that just showed his work rate, what he's willing to do. He's willing to get up the pitch and get a few scores, but then also track back. He turned over one or two balls. Owen Cody was the same. He wasn't standing in the full forward line waiting for balls to come into him. When he smelt a bit of danger where he could go and dispossess the player, he went and he did that. So it's great that the two boys are just there. Obviously, we know their capability with scoring, but they're well able to go back and track. And not only well able, they're willing to do it. And that's huge for Kilkenny. So
were they more willing today, though? Are you seeing more of that from them? And is that what you want to see? Is that what Kilkenny need to see from them?
Well, I think those two lads in particular knew that if Kilkenny were going to have a chance to win here today, they had to do that. Now, look, as we said, as the game played out, Clare just weren't at the races today, but it seemed that those two lads in particular, their minds were tuned that, well, we're going to go out here and we're going to tackle and we're going to hassle. first of all. We're going to win that ball, and then we're going to turn around and we're going to go forward. So those two lads, their heads were tuned for tackling, for a fight, because that's what Clare had shown in their backline all through this year. So I think those two lads were ready for a battle, and they brought the battle. Clare just didn't bring the battle in the backline.
It's a 2-week run into the All-Ireland final. And of course, the All-Ireland final is earlier than it's ever been before, earlier certainly than it's ever been in recent history. Does that have any effect on things, or what difference does that make for Kilkenny?
No, I don't think it has any effect. You're in an All-Ireland final now. Both teams, whoever's going to be in the final, will have 2 weeks preparation. So, it's no advantage, there's no disadvantage to any other team. The fact it's in July rather than September, again, doesn't make a difference. The fact is, with the split season, is that this team has been together, unbroken for the last 6 months or even more. So that's a benefit, if anything. But the 2-week turnaround, look, if any team over this weekend picks up an injury, it's a very short time to turn around and try and rectify those injuries. But it looks like Kilkenny came through this match unscathed. So they'll have a few days to recover. They won't have much time to actually implement anything in training. Whatever you saw today with Kilkenny is probably what they're going to bring to a final as well. So there's very little time to go back to the training ground for both teams to get to the final and work on anything. It's very much recover, get ready for the final, and go at the final. And
what's the lead in like for the players? Run me through the next couple of days.
Well, sure, look, the next couple of days, you'll have lads on to you about tickets, you'll have different things, you'll have people asking questions, how are different players, what's the preparation? And the big thing for players running into the final will be tickets, and not letting their mind get distracted with tickets.
How did you handle that? Tommy had the black book, and then he had a list of names of people who asked him throughout the years, and then of course he passed it all on to his mother, who handled it. What do you do? How did you handle it?
I suppose the regulars, that had come to me during the year looking for tickets, obviously look after that, but try not to take on too much. You try not to be ringing looking for tickets or trying to go too far out your way. Not that that's not to sound sympathetic with people, but players have a job at the end of the day, and their job is to be in the right frame of mind coming All-Ireland final. They don't need to be running around 2 or 3 days before a final trying to get tickets to lads. They need to be able to just, down tools, prepare for an All-Ireland final. So in that situation, I got a few tickets, got what I could, give them out to lads, and make sure you give them out early and just focus on the mind then. But, for a player run into a final now, like for TJ Reid, this is, I'm sure it's into the teens nearly at this stage for finals, whereas you're going to look at the like of Mikey Butler, and this is his first All-Ireland final. So all players are going to prepare differently, and look, it's something to be enjoyed. Enjoy the celebration, enjoy the build-up. Everywhere these lads will go now, they'll be getting a pat in the back, and there'll be great excitement.
Is that good or bad?
Well, it's good as long as you can park it and walk past people. It's good to enjoy it, but as long as you know how to enjoy it, that it's not, going to the head or the feet aren't coming off the ground. As long as you remember you have a job to do and go and win that All-Ireland final, it's not a bad thing.
It's Limerick or Galway in the final for Kilkenny. Who do you think it would be? Who do you think is going to win tomorrow?
Well, look, the head has to say Limerick at the moment. Croke Park with Limerick, it just seems like it's made for them to go out and win this game by 8 or 10 points. Galway going into this game, I suppose maybe getting out of jail against Cork. Cork had a lot of chances in that game to potentially win it. But Galway did what they had to do, really. So they're there in merit, in fairness to them. But this is a Limerick juggernaut at the moment, and it's hard to see how they're going to beat them. But I do give them a chance. They could come and do like what we did in 2019. They could potentially do that. Gerard McInerney, he's an injury scare at the moment in terms of what he picked up in the quarter final. And really, Galway are going to have to find something that they didn't find for the rest of the year so far, and maybe surprise Limerick. So it's a monumental task for Galway at the moment. They have a great man in Henry there that could get them to the pitch of the game, but it's at the moment it's looking like a Limerick win by maybe 8 or 10 points.
It would be very interesting though, wouldn't it? Henry Shefflin on one side, Brian Cody on the other in the All-Ireland final.
Yeah, look, I suppose a lot of people will say that, and that's the narrative they want. Look, I want the 2 best teams in the final. I want a good All-Ireland final. I'm not really too concerned with what's happening off the pitch with that, and unfortunately I think an All-Ireland final and that could distract from it. So yeah, look, I just hope that whoever's in the final there tomorrow, let the best team win, and I'm just looking forward to a great final with Kilkenny in it.
Finally, what do you make of this Munster hurling, Leinster hurling argument?
Yeah, look, again, I suppose you bite your lip a lot of the time when people say, Munster hurling, home hurling, and that Leinster hurling's not in a great place. But look, there's a fairly definitive answer as to where Leinster hurling is, and potentially today, except for Wexford maybe, not closing out the game against Clare, and there was potential there that Wexford could have won that game. We could have had another Leinster team in an All-Ireland semi-final. So, look, I'm not too concerned with that. There's some people that will talk about saying Leinster hurling isn't as strong as it, but look, we have a Leinster team in an All-Ireland final, and we're waiting to see now for potentially another Leinster team, but it's looking like it'll be a Leinster-Munster final.
Of course, Connacht have a team in the semi-final as well.
Yeah, I don't know what way to look at it now. What way do they want to be seen, Connacht or Leinster? I'm not sure.
Okay, Paul Murphy for now. Thank you very much, Paul Murphy. A regular on Off the Ball, a regular on all our social media channels, and of course the co-host of the Hurling Pod alongside James Skell and Will O'Callaghan. You'll be able to check out the Hurling Pod on Monday, and you can go to offtheball.com or any of the social media channels to find out more. Don't forget, Off the Ball is on air tomorrow from 1 o'clock. We are live in Croke Park ahead of the All Ireland semi-final between Limerick and Galway. We'll also have updates from the minor final between Offaly and Tip in Nolan Park, and that's going to be quite an occasion. Paul, thank you.